I moved houses. You may or may not recognize, but the space is different. I'm in a different room. I have a little bit more space to set up all of my sewing goodies, which is obviously my main priority at all times. I have set up my space almost identically to my last room because why fix what ain't broke? I really like my setup. I'm so lucky that the people that we're renting from allowed me to put up my most treasured pegboard. Let me show you. Here she is. I have literally no idea what to do without it. I have so much of my everyday essentials on my pegboard. It's my pride and joy. I don't know what I'll do when I move out of here. But for now, I'm just going to love and appreciate this. And yeah, I'm obviously going to give you a little room tour because that feels essential. But if we've never met before, my name's Carly. I'm a sewist here on YouTube. I make sewing content, so it's not about rooms and such. And we will sew today, so stick around. And if you want to skip to the sewing portion of the video, I will put in timestamps, so you may shamelessly click to that portion of the video. I understand. But if you care about my room, let me show you. Oh, and I'm just really feeling in a silly little mood, so I think I might just show you some like little bits and bobs that I'm just really excited about because why not? The first thing is I just had my anniversary with my boyfriend. We've been together for 3 years and he made me these incredible star clips. Every now and then when we have a special occasion, he'll just make me a little clip for my hair. And his construction skills are getting really good. There's like little buttonholes on the back so you can put the clip through. And I get really excited for whenever I know I'm going to be receiving a gift from him because I know it's going to be something really interesting and cool. So yeah, my first love of the season, these star clips. Just taking a moment to be so excited about how far I can step back from the camera because I have a lot of space. Usually I'm like this close, y'all, but check this out. When I need to show you my whole outfit, maybe I can now without buying a bigger lens. This is my sleeping portion of the room. I have the smallest possible bed, so I have the most room for activities. Love that priorities. I have this beautiful painting that comes with me everywhere, done by one of my friends, Gabriella. I love it. Some beautiful flowers from my boyfriend. And of course, a little tiara. And I know the lighting's kind of crazy because I got windows here, but this is a still life that my boyfriend gouache painted for me and I'm obsessed with it. Also, FYI, when I make YouTube videos for you guys, I usually turn my fan off and I put my aircon on the lowest speed so that you can't hear it too much, but it's not like sweltering hot for me. But in this room, no aircon, and it's summer in Australia. Painting the picture for you. So I have a little fan action going on and I've got open windows. So if we're getting some nature, buzzing bees, fan audio, apologies. I think it is essential for my survival. Thank you for understanding. You guys should be pretty familiar with this setup by now. I got my pegboard, which has everything I use on a minute-to-minute, day-to-day basis whilst sewing. All of my threads, rulers, lint roller, embroidery hoops, scissors, and then just like little extras like seam rippers, fabric markers, and paintbrushes for turning straps right side out. Spotlight on some of the really cute little artworks, again supplied to me by my boyfriend who is an artist, and I like them very much and I always ask for these, so they're all over my room. This is my walk-in wardrobe. And just wait. Hey Google, turn on closet lights. Okay. Wow! Did I add LED strips? Yeah! Kinda good. This is where I managed to fit almost everything that I own. I have all of my clothes and all of my fabric, and yes, I will show you. Okay, so over here is where I'm storing all of my fabric. Almost all of this is thrifted fabric. I got 2 big storage shelves from Bunnings. They were $50 each. They fit perfectly together and perfectly under the curtain rod, and I'm very pleased with this. They're the perfect amount of sturdy. All of my patterns are hanging up in the corner. On the top I have my lighting equipment, my dress form, and my packaging for my small business. And on the other side I have 5 big pouches of scraps, soon to be 6 once I fill that next pouch. And I have just like some personal items and my clothing. And because I work with scraps almost every day, I'm hoping it's fine to just kind of yeet these down every day by the tab, lay them all on the floor, and just work as usual. These are from IKEA. they're kind of good. I'm feeling like such a YouTuber giving you a little bedroom tour, but I'm loving it. So let's continue. On this portion of the wall, I decided to put a clothes rack. For my small business, I have little drops of clothing that I put up, maybe like 10 to 15 pieces. And I do like keeping them separate from my own personal clothing. So having a separate rack is kind of nice. It's gonna have my shop items here, and I also just have a record player at the bottom and some bags on the side. Would you like me to play you something? I probably can't because of copyright, but just imagine. Do 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 do. The other thing I realized, because I have more floor space, that means I can cut out more fabric in a go, which I didn't even think about until yesterday. And then I was like, and I know you guys were curious, do you have an ensuite? Yes, I do. I'm feeling very excited about this. I have some beautiful towels. I actually bought nice towels for the first time in my life, so that is a little thrill of my day-to-day right now. And yes, I don't think you need to see this space, but I'm really excited about it. Thanks for coming around my room with me. I've just spent the last week and a bit just trying to settle in and decorate and make everything look homey. And usually I'm super random with my styling, so I've actually been trying to learn about interior design. I've been taking some online classes at the moment so that I can get better at this skill. The classes I've been taking have been teaching me more about styling techniques, the power of plants in a space, and also how to keep them alive, and also how to create some cute little DIY pieces to further liven up the space. The classes are a part of a learning path called Craft Your Space, Design the Perfect Room with DIY Decor, and they're on my favorite learning platform of all time, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community that has thousands of engaging classes taught by world-class creatives and industry pros. They have classes on everything from knitting to cooking, crochet, music production, house decorating, and of course, sewing. I speak from experience, it is the perfect place to kickstart a new hobby. I especially love the learning paths on Skillshare, which are sequential class collections that have been hand-picked and tailored and curated so that you can go in order taking the classes and you can build on your skills as you go. I already told you I've been taking the learning path Craft Your Space, but the first class in that learning path has been so cool. It's called Style Your Space, Creative Tips and Techniques for Interior Design with Emily Henderson. And it has so much great knowledge and has encouraged me to keep developing my personal style and curate meaningful and special pieces in my space that kind of spark creativity and joy. I've loved learning from Emily. She has such a beautiful energy and so much knowledge to share, and I'm really excited to take the rest of the classes in this learning path. I really do love learning with Skillshare, and I know you will too. Whether you want to start a new hobby or you want to find your creative passion, invest in yourself and your goals, and embark on a learning journey with Skillshare. To get you started on that learning journey, I'm so excited that Skillshare have a great deal for you. The first 500 people to click the link in my bio will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so jump on that if you are keen. And thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. This is a heart because I love Skillshare, obviously. Hey, let's make a dress now. So a few months ago, I got sent this literally beautiful fabric from a company called Silk and Stitch. They sent me 4 different colors of silk dupion and a few different variations of their bridal lace, and they are to die for. And because they're so beautiful, they have been sitting in my stash untouched for a few months because I've been too scared to use them. I know some of you are going to relate to that feeling, but after so much consideration, I know what I want to do with the silk dupion, and today is the day we're cracking into it. Silk dupion has kind of a stiffness to it. You can kind of hear it's got like a crinkly sound, and because it's a fabrication that I've never worked with before, I just don't think I have the confidence to know what to use it for. But as always, for me personally, the best way to learn is by doing. So today I'm just going to do it with bravery. You're here to help me. And I just want to make an oversized dress with 2 gathered tiers, patchworking these 4 gorgeous colors with an emphasis on some really big voluminous puff sleeves. Hey, but immediately I got out my size 16 bodice pattern, which happens to be attached to this A-line pattern. Whatever, I just hack it every time. And now I'm like, maybe an A-line would be sick, because it would hold the structure so well. Ugh! It's an A-line or to not is the question. No, I think it has to be gathered because I'm just so curious to see how beautiful the gathers will look in this. I think it's going to be beautiful. And curiosity always wins in my book. Because what are we doing if not learning and following our creative instincts? So basically here I have an oversized bodice block, front and back. I kind of just self-drafted the neck hole area, and I've cut it in half and added seam allowance down the center seam so that I can have all 4 fabrics featured front and back. So the first thing I need to do is just join up the center seams of the front and back, and then I can construct the bodice. Also, I haven't said this in a while, so I should. You do not need an industrial sewing machine to start sewing. Really, as long as the sewing machine works, you are good to go. You can even start by hand sewing. I just happen to have an industrial machine because I sew full time and I love it, but you do not need this to sew. To construct my bodice, I sewed its center seam all the way down and overlocked that edge. Of course, I pressed that edge to make it nice and clean. And then I proceeded to pin and sew down the side seams as well as the shoulder seams to make a complete bodice shape. That is the top. Got the lavender and the mint, then the peach and the other color, which I don't really know what to call. It's cute. I think I'm gonna do maybe like a little curved waist just for some interest. So I'm just going to cut into the bodice like that. But yeah, I think the next step is going to be sleeves because I just want to workshop a few sleeve designs and see how puffy we can get them. I want them to be like this. This is one of my favorite textbooks. It's Pattern Making for Fashion Design by Helen Joseph Armstrong. And I like looking at different shapes just to refresh my memory. Basically for this puff sleeve, I want to have fullness at the cap and fullness at the sleeve. So I just need to make sure that both of these seam lines are far bigger than my sleeve hole. And then I will gather it up to fit in. For me, puff sleeves are always interesting because I want to fit as much fabric in the sleeve as possible without it kind of drooping down because of the weight. So I'm going to have a play because the silk dupion is so light and scrunchy and it holds its shape. So maybe we'll be able to create some really interesting shapes here. I'm going to draft up a few ideas. See what we like. Huge. Huge. Okay, not gonna lie, kind of love this. By far the most fabric in a puff sleeve I've ever done. My notes are that I might like it a little less gathered under the sleeve and more gathered on the top. And I think I can bring it up just above the elbow. So maybe I'll take 2 inches off the bottom of the sleeve pattern. That's the sleeve, just a little bit shorter and with less gathering under the arm, although we'll see how that goes. And I think I want to just make a seam line right in the middle where it will transition from color to color. Hopefully with the silk, it'll just really stand out. I actually just wanted to try one more thing. This is a sleeve that I like, but then I was curious, what if it went really high up here? Would this create more volume or would it just be really saggy? So I've just added heaps more volume at the top here, which means that it's so long at this fold line. It might look crazy, but I'm gonna whip it up because I'm interested. I think on further inspection, it's kind of weird because what it wants to do is be like this, but what it actually does is it goes all the way down here and then the bottom of the armhole just is really kind of random looking. I think I'm going to go with my first sleeve. To create that split, I just freehand drew this curve and then split my pattern into 2 pieces and then proceeded to cut that out of the silk dupion, adding a seam allowance where I would be sewing the 2 pieces together. And then I just really slowly sewed them together, being careful to line up the curves, and overlocked that raw edge and gave it a good press. This is the sleeve. I think it's going to be about 2 meters long. And for those that are interested, the widest part of the middle of the sleeve, I think is probably going to be about 40 centimeters. So it's a pretty big sleeve.
I sewed up the side seam of the sleeve, overlocked that edge, and then proceeded to do my gathering stitches all along the top and bottom edge of the sleeve so that I could hand gather it.
By the way, I just decided to overlock both edges of the sleeve because I didn't want it to fray into oblivion, which it kind of felt like this material would with all of this gathering I'm about to do. This is cool. It holds the gathers in such a sweet way. It's just like a little poof. There's so much fabric in here. I wonder if it would still be easy to get this vibe with less fabric. Because I don't necessarily think it makes it more puffy, but I love that the creases are so deep and it just feels like, I don't know, there's a look going on here. I think I need to pop it in the bodice so I can get a proper feel for it.
I put the sleeve in the bodice right sides together, and then I aligned that seam and tried to get the gathers dispersed as evenly as possible, and then I just sewed in between my two gathering stitches to secure.
That's the vibe. Ha! I love it. I really just wanted it to feel like a big ball on my arm, and that's exactly what it's giving. It holds the shape brilliantly. I'm pretty into this as a fabric. Very fun. Okay, let me do the other sleeve and then we can do the skirt. Yay! Bea! Hey, beautiful. Yeah. Okay, the sun is setting and I'm too lazy to get my softboxes out for today, so I'm going to call it a day with this project. The sleeves, exciting. My next day of sewing, I'm just going to finish the neckline. I think I'm going to do a bias binding, but maybe I'll use facing. I'm not quite sure just yet what Silk Dupion wants to be. And I will add cuffs to the sleeves and a two-tiered super gathered skirt. And that's my vibe. It will be simple construction-wise, but the interesting element of play is that I just don't really know how to interact with the fabric yet, so we're learning along the way. But that's awesome. Day one of this project done. What's up? It's a new day and it's time to get cracking on this dress. I want to finish it off today. Let's go.
I decided to do a cutout in the back just to create some more ease when getting in and out of the dress, so I freehand cut that out and then decided to finish it by bias tape. So to make the bias tape, I use this cool technique where you cut out a square, cut it into two triangles, then sew those triangles together to make, I think it's parallelogram, but it also could be a rhombus. Maths. Grade 10 math students, let me know what that shape is. Then you draw out your bias tape line, which is like 2.5 centimeters for me, and you're going to sew that seam down together, just misaligning those lines by 1, so that when you basically adjoin it, you can just cut it all the way around in a big spiral and you get a long continuous length of bias tape. It's honestly such a great technique, and this made like 2.5-3 meters. Awesome. Then I started attaching my bias tape. So basically I just sandwiched the fabric in between the two layers of the bias tape and just gently readjusted that as I went around this whole curve. And of course I gave it a very good press to finish.
I always used to have problems attaching bias tape like this, where you can kind of see the bias tape and it just really acts as a sandwich or a clamp over the raw edge of the seam. And the reason is because I would never catch the bias tape underneath. And I just wanted to explain my learnings because it frustrated me for so long. And what I was doing when I made my bias tape was making both sides of the bias tape exactly even. So I was folding the edges in half and then folding the bias tape in half again, and they were even like this. But what I learned off the internet a little while ago is that it's probably easier to work with if you have a slight overlap, very slight, so that you can see the back part of the bias tape and then the front part is like slightly ajar. So that when you're sewing it down, if you're sewing on the slightly shorter side, you know without a shadow of a doubt that you are catching the back portion of the bias tape. And honestly, it looks clean on the inside and everything is caught in the seam, and yeah.
I lined up the center of the rest of my bias tape to the center of the bodice and then sewed from the end of the tie all the way up across the whole neckline, making sure to sandwich that raw edge between the bias tape and then all the way down the other end of the length of the bias tape tie. And then it was time to do the cuffs of the sleeves, and I decided that I wanted them to be a really similar measurement of bias tape vibe, although I did cut these on the grain so they didn't have that stretch, which personally I kind of like for a sleeve cuff. I think it just gives it a tiny bit more structure that maybe a sleeve needs. Don't know, it's just my hypothesis.
I don't mean to be insanely dramatic, but today is one of those days where I just do not feel like doing anything. I'm gonna pull through, I know, but I don't want to.
After my little whinge, I got back to it and I cut this little asymmetrical detail on the bodice, and then I made sure to just sew over where my seams were so that they wouldn't unravel in the future, and I got to cutting out the first tier of my skirt.
I've got this big long loop. It's probably like 4 meters, maybe a little less, and I will gather it by hand to match the bottom circumference of my bodice.
After sewing together all of my skirt pieces for the first tier, I then ran 2 parallel gathering stitches all the way along the top and then gathered the skirt by hand so that it would fit the circumference of the bodice. I then attached them right sides together, pinning them and gathering them as equally as possible and stitching carefully in between the 2 gathering stitches so that I would be able to remove the basting stitches later. I then got onto constructing the second tier of the skirt, which was a little bit longer than the first. I sewed all of my strips right sides together to create a very long strip and then gave it a really good press as always. I forgot to tell you guys the measurements of my tiers, so I thought you might be interested. The top tier is 10.5 inches wide and the second tier is 16 inches, so it's a bit longer. And I mainly just did that because I knew that I would have to even out the hem and I wanted a bit of extra length in case of emergencies. As my second tier was about 8 meters in length, I used my automatic gathering technique, which you just turn the tension up, the stitch length up, and then you use that tension to automatically gather. It's awesome. I gathered all of that 8 meters and then proceeded to pin that carefully to the tier of the skirt, and I sewed that down, gave it a really good press after overlocking it, of course, and I trimmed my hem so that it would lay evenly. That's just accounting for the little asymmetric detail I added, and then I hemmed it, and then it was done. Okay, the dress is done. The sleeves are sleeving, which I'm very excited about. When I initially received this silk dupion from Silk & Stitch, I really only had one concept, and that was to make the most voluminous sleeves that I could achieve, because I knew that this fabric would hold volume better than cotton, and it certainly does. So I've really enjoyed working with a new fabric. This dress is very fun and puffy. I cannot wait to show you in literally 1 second. But before then, I just want to say thank you for being here. I appreciate you all so much. Please let me know what your projects are that you're working on at the moment. I love keeping up to date with your creativity and what's on the menu for projects in the future. Hit me up, let me know. Let's chat about it in the comments. Sewing nerds, unite! Anyway, that is it for me today. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like or subscribe to my channel. I post sewing content as frequently as I possibly can. Okay, that is enough from me today. It's time for you to see the dress in its finished form. Let's go. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one. Bye!